In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about Interchange Plus pricing. So we've talked so far about tier pricing and flat rate pricing. And just like in the previous videos, we're going to go back to the example of the hat store. So imagine that you own a store that sells hats. And we talked about how you have all these different costs. And so in the tier pricing model, we were taking our hats and we were putting them on one of three shelves. We had kind of the low cost shelf, the middle cost shelf, and then the high cost shelf. Then we talked about flat rate pricing where we had the same cost and it was like, hey, let's just sell them all for 15 bucks. And in credit card processing, that would be a flat percentage fee that you would charge. Well, the next really most popular cost structure today is actually Interchange Plus. So Interchange Plus is really the exact opposite of these first two programs because Interchange Plus, or what's called cost plus pricing, is the most complex and the most transparent. So again, in the hat store, imagine if instead of having three shelves, imagine if you took your hats and said, okay, no matter what this hat cost me, I'm going to take it and I'm going to mark it up 20%. So if the hat cost me $10, I'm going to sell it for $12. If it cost me $20, I'm going to sell it for $24. So I always know that I'm going to make 20%. Now, there are some good things and some bad things with that, right? The bad thing would be that it's actually really confusing for the consumer. The consumer comes in that wants to buy the hat and they kind of look around, they see, oh, that looks like a nice hat. They pick it up and it's $17.38. Then the hat next to it is $14.98. And then the next one's $26.33. And so all the hats in the store, almost all of them have different rates because you get different hats from different vendors that have different costs to you. And you're passing that cost on to the consumer with a little bit of a markup. And so imagine if your price tag even actually said this amount was my cost and then I marked it up 20% or whatever. It could very easily get complicated. Now, the good thing, of course, is that it's very transparent for the consumer. I mean, they would know for sure, hey, I make 20% on all the hats. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's what it cost me, and I'm marking it up, and that's what it is, right? So how does this translate into merchant services? Well, with merchant services, there are over 400 different interchange rates. Now, you don't need to know those rates. You don't need to memorize those rates. Don't worry about that, of course. But the idea is that these transactions that come through based on the type of card, the type of business where it was processed, like fuel stations have their own interchange cost for them, based on the type of business that it was come in, the method of entry. Was it over the phone? Was it via a gateway, a shopping cart online? Was it swiped? Based on all these different variables, you're going to have a lot of different interchange rates, different possible rates it could be. So with Interchange Plus pricing in the merchant services industry, the idea is we're going to pass the cost on to the merchant, right? Which in our case is like kind of our consumer. The merchant is like, that's our customer, that's our client is the merchant. So we're going to tell the merchant, look, no matter what transaction you process, we are going to give you the true cost of that transaction. And then we're going to add on maybe 25, 30, 50, 100 basis points of markup. So we're going to add on a percentage fee and we're going to add on a per item fee. Okay. So again, we go back to the very first video. We're going to have those percentage fees, the per item fees, and the fixed fees. So we may have a $5 a month fee, plus it's going to be, 50 basis points of markup and 10 cents. And so that's an example of Interchange Plus. So the merchant's going to say, okay, so they're going to pay whatever the cost is. They got to pay the interchange. They got to pay the dues and assessments, the network access brand usage fee, the assessments to the card brands, and they have to pay this markup. But the good thing is, of course, that it's very transparent. And so the business owner would look at the statement. Now, the statement's complicated. It can be a little confusing because there's so much on there with this big interchange table with all these different rates and fees. But at the end of the day, they should be able to look at that statement and say, okay, I can see how much I'm being marked up versus how much is just the cost that's being passed through to me by the processing company. So more transparency there. But again, the opposite of the last two we talked about because it's very complicated because we're literally taking all of these variable costs and passing them on to the merchant with a small markup. So that's Interchange Plus pricing. Let's dive into a couple more examples in the next video.